The Maternal Thread by C.J. Van Pletsen. The first step toward the gate. The winter rains ended abruptly in 1965, leaving the Western Cape dusted with a fragile green. Ambro Uri'el Smith, then still called Ambro by most, but Uri'el, in his own conviction, stood on the chapel hill where the map was hidden, his gaze fixed east, past the mountains, past the continent itself. He had not spoken of the map to anyone but Samuel. Even Eva, his mother, knew nothing. Frederick suspected something, but Uri'el had inherited his grandfather Zuriel's gift for silence, for carrying whole storms behind the veil of his eyes. The chapel became their secret refuge. For weeks, Uri'el and Samuel slipped away after lessons, climbing its worn steps with oil lamps hidden beneath their coats. Behind the altar, in the sealed cavity, they unrolled the copper-stitched vellum and spread it on the cold stone floor. Side by side, they compared its markings with entries from Zuriel's journals, fragments in German, Latin, and an older script neither of them could name. Zuriel's notes spoke of 3 players, of the gate in the mountain, and of the one who remembers. Samuel read aloud while Uri'el traced routes with his finger. A line from the Western Cape to Leopoldville, Belgian Congo. A sigil etched over the Carpathians, crimson and deliberate. Star clusters drawn alongside coastal maps. Piece by piece, they matched the vellum's symbols to constellations, ancient trade routes, and Brotherhood insignia. Samuel excelled in the details, converting Zuriel's measurements into modern coordinates, calculating distances with an uncanny knack for precision. Uriel's gift was vision. He saw patterns where no one else would. By candlelight, they copied every mark into a new ledger, combining Zuriel's writings, chapel relics, and their own observations into a working chart of their journey to be. The keeper's name. Among the relics housed within the chapel's shadowed alcove bones no one dared claim. Rusted censers dulled by centuries of smoke, chalices whose gold leaf had peeled into ash, there rested a reliquary of iron. It was plain compared to the others, its edges pitted, its clasp so stiff it seemed never to have been opened. When Uri'el forced it at last, expecting a saint's tooth or a fragment of cloth steeped in martyr's blood, he found instead only a slip of parchment. 1 line, 1 hand, Zuriel's, a name, Otto Kappel. The ink had browned to the color of dried blood, but the script was unmistakable. Zuriel wrote with that same angular force he had used in ledgers, decrees, letters no eye was meant to read. Uri'el held the paper as if it were itself an artifact, a bridge from the dead to the living, from the silence of one man's grave into the silence he himself was called to keep. He did not know the name, but the marrow of the word carried weight, as if the syllables had been tempered in fire before they were set to page. He whispered it, and the chapel seemed to lean closer, listening. That night, by candlelight, Uri'el returned to the ciphered ledgers Zuriel had left, their margins cramped with symbols that spoke of markets, wars, forgotten vaults. There, folded between 2 notations about shipments of wine that were surely more than wine, the name surfaced again. Otto Kappel, antiquarian bookseller, Vienna, and beneath it, written in Zuriel's private cipher, drop point of the Brotherhood. Uriel's pulse quickened. Vienna was no random city, no careless detail. It was the heart once pierced by empires, a crossroads of ruins and resurrections. To anchor a name, there was to tie it to centuries of hidden currents. He drafted a letter. His hand was steady, though the candle trembled. He wrote in flowing German, the words chosen with the precision of one who knew language could be both key and trap. He signed no name. Instead, he pressed wax upon the fold. and imprinted it with the sigil Zuriel had designed. The merged ANAK star mark, the emblem of Ash, the Valknut, the Lion of Judah, the Teutonic cross all converging into one seal, one paradox, a signature not of a man, but of a covenant. Samuel carried the sealed letter to a merchant preparing for Europe. Uriel's only command was spoken in a voice stripped of youth. No one else touches this. And Samuel, though tempted to jest, heard the weight in his brother's tone, and bowed his head, as if taking an oath. Weeks later, a reply came, a plain envelope unmarked, no flourish of hand nor scent of foreign paper, only a date, only a railway station in Budapest. It was less a letter than an open door. Lessons from Frederick. One evening, as shadows lengthened in the vineyard, and the scent of crushed grapes clung to the air like incense after liturgy, Frederick called his son into the study. The room was thick with wood smoke and the faint bitterness of ink. Uriel entered quietly, but he did not bow his head. "I've heard," Frederick began, his voice neither tender nor cruel, "that you've been chasing shadows. I've heard of late lights burning in the chapel, of questions whispered where no priest stands to answer them. Tell me, Uriel, why should I not put an end to this now?" Uriel did not avert his gaze. The firelight struck his face in angles that belonged to Zuriel more than to Frederick. His reply was neither rehearsed nor hesitant. "Because you've been waiting for me to start." The words hung heavy, heavier than the silence that followed. They disarmed Frederick in a way no plea could have. For a moment, the mask of father, farmer, vintner fell aside, and the man beneath the keeper, the heir of another keeper, stood revealed. Slowly, Frederick rose and moved to the cabinet he kept locked, not with a key of iron, but with one of time and timing. From it he drew a single volume, bound in leather that had darkened with age and oil. He set it on the desk between them. Zuriel's ciphered memoir. "This," Frederick said, his hand lingering upon the cover as though it might burn him, "will mean nothing to you now. Its symbols are silence, its sentences a labyrinth. But know this, the man who gave me my name built this for you. He did not write for me, he wrote for a generation beyond. If you are to follow its path, you must learn two things." Uriel leaned forward. "Tell me." "First, travel without being seen. The world is a net, and eyes are its knots. If you are seen, you are caught. Second, listen more than you speak. Words are weapons, but silence is the sheath that keeps you alive long enough to use them." "I understand," Uriel said. Frederick's mouth tightened. "You don't. Not yet. But you will." From his coat, he withdrew a smaller object, a sealed envelope, its weight disproportionate to its size. He held it out with a solemnity that reminded Uriel of communion. "If anything happens to me, this is yours to bear. Deliver it to Otto Kappel in Vienna. Do not break the seal. Do not read. It is not for you. It is for him. He will know what to do." Uriel accepted it with both hands, as one receives a relic. The wax glimmered red in the lamplight, fragile yet unbroken. Frederick studied his son a long moment, as though memorizing the face of one he would soon lose. "You are young," he said at last, "but youth is no shield. The fire that carried Zuriel did not cool when he died. It waits. It waits for you. When you walk into it, you will know what his silence meant." Uriel said nothing. He only bowed his head, the envelope pressed to his chest like a hidden vow. Outside, the vineyard sighed in the night wind, and the stars leaned closer, listening. Growing years, the years between 12 and 18 moved like a river, sometimes slow, pooling in long afternoons of vineyard toil. and chapel silence, sometimes rushing so swiftly that the boys could scarcely keep their footing. Childhood receded behind them like a drowned village. Manhood approached like rapids they could not yet see but already heard in the distance. Uriel's eyes sharpened with age. By 14, he walked the vineyard rows not as a boy trailing his father, but as one who heard the ground itself. He bent low, pressed his palm into the soil, and closed his eyes as if listening for a heartbeat. "Not here," he would whisper, "here." And Frederick, who had once thought such instincts little more than boyish fancy, began to trust him. He moved irrigation lines, shifted planting, cut back where Uriel advised, and the vines obeyed. Seasons proved the boy true. Grapes fattened, roots steadied, and wine ran richer. The workers said he had Zuriel's gaze, the kind that saw more than the surface, as though earth and vine confessed their secrets only to him. Samuel grew into another kind of certainty. His strength filled him like a horn poured to overflowing. By 15, his shoulders had broadened. His laughter carried over the valley like a trumpet blast. And he moved among the vineyard hands as a brother, not a master says son. He sparred with older boys, wrestling them into the dirt, only to clasp their hands in good cheer. He carried barrels twice his weight across the cellar stairs, sweat gleaming on his back like oil poured for sacrifice. He was quick to defend the smallest laborer, scolding men twice his age when their cruelty showed. Even Frederick, stern and slow to yield a smile, once had to hide his mouth behind his hand at a joke Samuel made too clever for his years. Yet when the sun dipped and shadows pressed close, laughter dimmed. In the chapel, levity fell away as a cloak at the threshold. There the two brothers sat with candle stubs guttering in brass holders, vellum stretched between them. Zuriel's journals piled like silent witnesses. They copied, then recopied, tracing every line of script until it entered their memory. They whispered aloud the strange geometries, cross-checked with Zuriel's notes until their tongues knew the taste of symbols as surely as their hands knew the tools of vineyard and press. The air smelled of wax and dust and something older, the faint iron scent of stone that had witnessed too many prayers, and always, below them, the 3 barrels slumbered in the cellar. Not wine, not vinegar, not mere cask. They stood like sentinels in the dark, constant reminders that their lives were not theirs to squander on harvest alone. The barrels were inheritance and burden, covenant and trap. They whispered of journeys not yet begun, of fire coiled beneath oak staves, of bloodlines written into wood and sealed in silence. Uri'el, lying awake in the loft, sometimes thought he heard them breathing. Samuel scoffed when Uri'el said as much, but even his laughter was quieter in the cellar. He too would pause at the threshold before descending, as though measuring his courage. The river of years carried them forward, pulling boyhood from their bones. Uriel's silence deepened into command. Samuel's laughter hardened into loyalty. The chapel candles burned shorter. The journals grew more worn. The barrels gathered more dust. And still, the current pulled them toward something vast, unseen, inevitable.